Our next storyteller, I asked her who she thought was on thin ice right now, and she said the entire United States of America. I assume she means with the exception of Brooklyn, right? Yes. Thank you very much. Let's hear from MicheleCarlo.
Everybody's so much taller than me. Yes, the entire United States of America is on thin ice with the exception of New York City, because that's where I'm from. Yes, I'm a native New Yorker. And so I grew up in the Bronx. And before you guys start ducking for cover, let me just say that, okay, I have to qualify this. I did grow up in the Bronx, but it wasn't a ghetto and it wasn't a project, even though it definitely was a hood. And when I mean hood in the best sense of the word, because if any of you are from New York City, you know that a neighborhood is almost exactly the same as a small town anywhere in the country, because everybody knows everybody knows everybody's business, and most of the people never ever leave. And it's kind of almost like a Norman Rockwell illustration, really. I mean, as if a Norman Rockwell illustration would have the number 6 elevated train running diagonally across it. But yeah, and I even have to say that Christmas in the Bronx is a lot of times like a Norman Rockwell illustration, except the year it wasn't. I was 15, and it was the Tuesday before Christmas. And as usual, I went straight home from school, went in my room, closed the door, opened the window, got my little boom box, and put it on the fire escape. And I had all this tinfoil on the antenna, and I aimed it right towards the Whitestone Bridge, because that was the only way I could get the radio station WLIR, and they were going to be playing the new Blondie album. Now, you know how old I am? I don't care. All right, so the new Blondie album is playing. I have to tape it, and I'm out there, and it's just started to snow. So, like, I'm trying to brush the snow off the boombox, and I'm trying to sneak a cigarette, and I'm trying to get the reception, and my mother bangs on the door, and she says, "Stop whatever I'm doing, because I have to go to the store for her now." And I was just like, oh man, what you gotta ruin my life for? You know, because like the last thing I wanted to do, now that it was snowing, was to walk all the way over to the drugstore, which is like 5 or 6 blocks away, and the last thing that I wanted to get was what she wanted me to buy for her. Kotex. And not just any box of Kotex, okay? But the huge super box, the big box, purple box with the big yellow lettering that said super, and the box that never fit into any kind of bag. So whenever you carried it, the top always stuck out of it, and anyone who looked at it looked at you and knew that you were the one that must be bleeding a lot. So I'm in the drugstore, and I'm buying the freaking Kotex, and the cashier, this little pimply guy, he's like looks at me and he starts sniffing the air, and I'm like thinking I'm gonna fucking kill you, and I just like grab the bag, and I'm like, my life is ruined, it's miserable, I want to die, was I born someplace else? And then I'm thinking all these thoughts, and you know it's snowing, and I'm like kind of slipping because I'm wearing sneakers, and then all of a sudden, before I knew it, these 2 boys whizzed by me, and they grabbed the bag out of my hand. Now, these 2 boys weren't just any 2 boys. They were Dennis and Louie from the OBC, which went the Overing Boys crew. Now, that meant that they hung out in 192 schoolyard instead of going to school, and that they dealt weed, and that every boy in my neighborhood wanted to be them, and every girl in my neighborhood wanted to make out with them. Except me, because I hated them both, especially Dennis. Well, not really. I really had a mad, hormonal, raging crush on Dennis all year, which I could never do anything about because he just scared me. He just terrified me. And when you love somebody that much, the only thing you could do is to hate them. And that's what I did. So they have the bag. They have the bag with the big purple box with the bright orange lettering, and they're throwing it across like a football. And I'm just like screaming because I'm so terrified that they're going to find out what's in it. And you know, at this point, I just go, "What the fuck, guys?" You know, like the typical ladylike teenager that I was, you know. And I'm telling you, my shame made me run faster than they could. So I tackled Dennis, but the box slipped out of the bag and went into Westchester Avenue where the number 9 bus ran over it. And then, like, I'm just crying. I'm on the floor, and then Louis comes over, and he, like, kicks me in the leg. He's like, "Show, what's the matter? It's only a freaking box of cookies." And then Dennis picks me up, and he looks in the street, and he looks at me, and I know that he knows what was in the box, but somehow He doesn't say anything. He's like, don't worry, Shell. Do you want us to walk you home? And I was like, walk me home? You know, or this whole future, just like stuff, walk me home. But then I was about to say, like, no, you can't walk me home. But then across the street, I saw Mary Beasley, who everybody on the block knew did you know what with him behind the handball court. And she was looking at me as if she wanted to rip me apart. So I just grabbed Dennis's hand and I said, sure, you can walk me home. And in the 20 minutes since I had gone into the drugstore and gotten out, it had snowed about a foot. It was a total blizzard going on. I mean, it was really, really, really coming down. And we turned the corner, and this one street, I mean, if you are from New York City, you know that there are many neighborhoods that are known for their wonderful Christmas decorations. Well, this was not really one of them. This was a neighborhood where people had, like, little budgets and large imaginations, and they were, like, really, you know, it was like they would spend like a month's paycheck on like the Con Ed bill for like 2 weeks, and they were like dancing Rudolphs and talking Jesuses, and every other house had like Donna Summer Christmas album blaring out of it. I'm telling you. And anyway, so we're walking, and it's like, you know, it's all these lights, and it's snowing, and it's blowing, and all of a sudden, I don't know how this started, but one of us started getting snow from a car, and we start throwing at each other. And then these big fat flakes came down, and we're like twirling around trying to catch them, and we're like licking them off each other's sleeves, and then somebody falls into a car. There was no car alarms back then, so there's no noise. We like played Johnny on the Pony on Louie. We just like banging him up and down, and we fall into a snowdrift, and we get up again, and we push each other down. And this goes on for like, I don't even know how long. We're just like throwing snow at each other and rolling around, and we're just like laughing and screaming, going, ee! And then we get up, and then like there's a hill right before the block where I live. And the three of us, we start running down this hill. But like we're wearing Converse and Pro Keds, you know, it's like a foot and a half of snow. So one of us falls, and all of us end up going down, and we end up in this like teenage snowball that's rolling down St. Peter's Avenue, and it goes boom into a light post, and then we're all like this. And we're just like stunned for a minute. And, you know, we get up, and the three of us are just like standing there, and I look at Dennis and I look at Louie, and all I see are two boys with like scratched faces and all like red from the snow, and like their really long eyelashes kind of like glistening. And I was like, God, there's nothing to be scared of. They're just boys. Like, I'm just a girl, right? And there was just like this moment with the three of us standing under the street lamp, and the snow is just coming down, and we're looking at each other, and like nobody knew what to do or what to say or anything. And then finally, Dennis says to me, Shell, are you home? And I said, yeah, I live right there. And then another second passes, and then first Dennis, and then Louie bend down, they kiss me, one kiss on each cheek. And then they hit me in the back, and they run up the hill, and they go, Merry Christmas, Shell, Merry Christmas. And I'm like, they kissed me. And I float up the stairs to my apartment, and my mother's like, wanted to know where her box was, and then I had to tell her I got run over by a bus. She wasn't very happy about it. She actually made me pay her back out of my own money, and she made my father go out in the snow to get it, and he wasn't happy about that either. The day after Christmas, both Dennis and Louie were murdered. They were going to the McDonald's on Silver Street, and they were crossing East Tremont Avenue, and this car came by and threw a beer can at them. And there was another guy that was with them, this guy Casey, and he picked up the beer can and threw it back and said, fucking douchebag, which is what you would say if someone threw a beer can at you, right? That's the appropriate thing to say, is fucking douchebag. But these people ride back around the block, and they shoot them. And Casey was the only one that lived because he saw a guy out of the corner of his eye, and he threw himself on the floor at the last second, and that's how he knew to tell everybody what had happened. And there was a funeral, and I don't know if you've ever been to a teenager's funeral. I remember it quite vividly because it was kind of like when my grandfather had died, except the people in the casket didn't have bushy eyebrows and a cough for smoking for 60 years. And the two of them were laid out together because they were best friends. And I remember kneeling in front of Dennis and just like looking and like just in total shock. And his mom came over to me and she puts her arms around me. And I remember looking at her and I was thinking, God, she's so young. You know, she must have been like 17 or 18 when she had him. And then I started thinking, and I'm like, doing math in my head, and I'm like, she must have been my age when she first started going out with Dennis's dad. And like she's talking to me, and this whole dialogue is going in my mind. I don't hear it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me, what did you say? And she said, I said, did you know him very well? And I looked at her, and I couldn't speak. Because like all these things were running through my mind, but like in my little teenage head, I was like, how could I tell her? I mean, how could I tell her about the crush and the year and the Kotex and the snow and the wind and the lights and the rolling and the screaming and the playing and the last pure kiss under that streetlight? I just didn't have the words, so all I did was say, yeah, kind of. And now, 25 years later, I still wish I had. Thanks.